want to do the roll call.
Well,
You can do it if you.
Then you can elect the chair and move forward. So Mark Eastman,
Present.
Paul Bissonnette,
Here.
Ed Rankin Jr.
Here.
Okay, I'll entertain nominations for the position of chair for the Infrastructure Committee.
I nominate Paul Bissonnette.
You beat me.
Need a second, Ed?
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
He saw it coming.
All righty.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is proposals for 27 Main Street. And I know we have Jason Bird on the line from Penquis. I know that Jack isn't on the line yet. I don't know if Jack's joining later or whatnot, but regardless, we can start with Mr. Bird if that pleases the committee. Great. Mr. Bird, I'll give you the floor.
Okay. I will give, if it's okay with you guys, I'll give you another rundown, maybe a little bit more detail of what we're thinking, and then certainly open it up to questions. I'm Jason Bird. I'm the Housing Development Director for Penquis. It's always helpful to get out of the way for anyone watching at home. But Penquis itself is an organization that's dedicated towards eliminating poverty and working with individuals to promote greater self-sufficiency and move them out of essentially the need for public assistance and service in any way that we can. And so we do that through transportation, housing, childcare, and a whole host of other services, and too many really to discuss for tonight. But I think, as many of you know, there's a tremendous need for housing across the state, but certainly in Bucksport and even for older Mainers. And so there's a unique opportunity right now with some of the funding that is available and even some of the census tract changes that have happened in the last couple of months, where a site or a project in Bucksport could be feasible. And so we proposed a scenario where we would like to not only flesh that out, and we're confident that we could make it work, but then move towards construction and produce the units. And so our proposal would be to provide housing for an older adult age range, and we say older adult because we mean those that are 55 and older, and it would go up and be entirely in independent living. But the primary genesis and then the hope to be able to blend those that are 55 and older and then go up would be that individuals in the building that are somewhat younger, maybe more mobile, could help some of the older individuals that may not be able to clean off their car in a snowstorm or do some of that other work. And so the primary goal on our end is to focus on individuals making 60% or less of area median income. And right now, based on the data that we have, that number would be anyone making probably, for a single household, about $30,000 or less, and then probably down to $24,000 at that range would probably be the bottom range in that income bracket, only because an individual that's making less than $24,000 would probably be in a position where they couldn't afford the rent long term without any other sort of support or subsidy. And so, and that's an important note to make here, that this housing or the housing we would build, we would create a standard tenant-landlord relationship. So once we receive some subsidy to be able to build the property, and we rent it to individuals that are income eligible, there aren't other sources necessarily coming in to backfill our losses or to backfill the rent for the individuals. And so this isn't housing for individuals, say a project-based property that are making 30% or less of area median income, where they would need a voucher, or the property itself would support those individuals. With that said, if someone were to come to us and they would be eligible and in need, and they would have a housing choice voucher, we would rent to that individual or even that couple. but that's not going to be the bulk of the individuals or the residents in the property if we were to build it. There's been some talk about us, questions from members of the community asking if we could go higher in the income range, and that's to a large extent not entirely possible, just because we have some severe restrictions in terms of the income brackets that we can work with. There are sometimes an opportunity where we could go as high as 80% of area median income, and that obviously would then shift and open up a number of other individuals or say a couple that would live in the property. We would then have to pair that with a 30% unit. And I say 30% would be that area median income unit. And in doing so, we would permanently restrict a unit in the building or however many units in the building for that category. And I think based on the number of other properties in town that are dedicated to that income bracket, I don't know if that's the best use, but at the same time, we're not opposed to looking at it. And we have posed that question to one of our funders to see if that's something we could do. It may not be eligible within this program, and that's one thing that it's somewhat all still new, and so some of those answers yet haven't come forward. But as of right now, our expectation would be the rent would be just under $800 a month and would include all utilities except TV and phone. So that would be electricity, water, sewer, heat, all maintenance inside and out with a professional third-party management crew. And I say that number, but certainly want to give a little bit of a caveat to say that the number could change between now and if we were to fully build and lease the unit, and that's a product really of what Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, at the federal level sort of bequeaths down to us around what some of the makeup is in the community and some of the data that they have. But once we were to create a floor, rents won't swing wildly from month to month. They'll actually be stable and affordable for the individuals. It's just that that number might change a little bit over the next couple of months, depending on when that new data does come out. And there's also been some talk around or questions around if we could build in some of market rate units. So setting aside or not really worrying about the income levels, if we could go to a traditional market rate. And while that is technically feasible, the challenge comes in that based on market rents in Bucksport, it would be difficult for us to get a return on that investment because we have to blend it in with the entire building, and our costs, arguably on a per unit basis, are pretty high. We expect to be probably almost around $200,000 a unit, and that's for a few reasons. One, it's super insulated, it's super well built, and in part because as an organization, we're signing on as a part of this funding to keep this property affordable for probably what's going to be at least 60 years. And so we have what we call first costs. We put a lot of money into the startup, so we don't build something that we then have flooring and everything else that we have to replace in 5 or 10 years. We try to put high quality material in because we're going to be renting at a below market rate, and we have such a small margin to work with. We can't keep having to replace shingles and other things every 10 or 15 years. So, and the other point to make on that is that we would have not only the investors in the property, but Maine Housing monitoring the quality of the building on a regular basis. And we work with local code and other things as well. But it's quite an orchestrated process. It's not just, we're not left to our own devices. We do it not only in tandem with local inspections and not only obviously going through the appropriate approvals, but we have 2 other parties that will monitor the construction and not only the plans as well as we finalize things. So as I said, that the hope right now, without really having an architect or an engineer spend time looking at the site and building envelope and all the zoning and all that kind of stuff, would be that we would build 40 units on the property with a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms, and I would say mostly 1-bedroom units. We will do a few 2-bedroom units, but they're just so hard to rent, and they're really geared. We end up utilizing those for individuals who have a live-in aid, because someone who's older in life but otherwise isn't quite ready for assisted living, they could live there with somebody to support them. But it's such a unique situation where someone could afford not only the 2-bedroom rent, but need that service. And so we only do a few of them. Units themselves would range between 800 and 600 square feet, would be a 1-bedroom, have a full kitchen, full bathroom, and there'd be a number of other design features that we build at the beginning. While not every unit is fully ADA accessible, all will have grab bars and a variety of other things that individuals would be able to age in place, even if they don't necessarily need the full ADA accessibility to begin with. They can comfortably live there for years to come, not having to move, or us having to go in and do expensive upgrades or things down the road after the building is built. One thing that we're proud of in terms of an additional service that we provide to the residents above and beyond community space and a whole host of other sort of physical features, we have what's called a resident services coordinator that would be on site at least a day a week. And that individual will, not right now, all of our resident services coordinators are connected with tenants over the phone, but post-pandemic, they'll be there on site to bring speakers in to talk about everything from financial management to scam and sort of fraud avoidance to helping organize birthday parties, bingo games, and those kinds of things. Not only building a sense of community, but their biggest role is to work with tenants and make sure that they have access to services and things that they need so that they can maintain tenancy, but also be able to thrive in place. And so that'll include just helping make contact with someone at Social Security if for whatever reason there's something going on, or to help, just be notified of, oh yeah, I got an email from the Prince of Egypt and he wants me to send him money and that kind of stuff. I can't begin to tell you how many times that stuff is avoided right now because of the connection and the services that we have on site, because people, they're trustworthy. They otherwise, just can sometimes get duped, and we obviously want to avoid that. So the last thing I'll say, and I'll certainly open up for questions, would be that if for whatever reason, we sign an agreement, we begin doing some of the due diligence and move down the line of our progression, and we're not successful, our plan would be that we would transfer back any, sort of resources that we establish. So we're going to do at a minimum soil samples, test borings, and site designs, a whole host of other things. We'll end up determining, the amount of ledge, if any, is in that hill. All that material, if for whatever reason we're not successful, we'd hand that back to the town. In theory, it'd be, a thank you for working with us, but also it's not necessarily useful for us, but it'd be obviously invaluable to the town in terms of helping a future developer not have to take as much risk and potentially be able to move a little bit quicker once they finalize or have an idea that they think could do on the property. So I'll stop there and certainly take questions if you have any.
Sure. I'll open it up to the committee for questions. We have a couple things on the agenda, so we'll try to stick to 10 to 15 minutes if we could before we move on to Mr. Gordon. Go ahead, Mark. I see you first.
Yeah, Jason, one question I had, did you examine all the parcels the town had to see if there's a better location where you could get more units on it?
We didn't look heavily at town-owned versus, private-owned. We looked, ownership aside. We've looked at a number of properties. I've been on site and looked at a couple of others as well. The important thing for us is walkability and being close to a downtown, services, grocery stores, and those kinds of things. There wasn't really enough that we found that was close enough. Now, and I am new to the town. I am still open. If there is another suitable site, we'd love to hear about it. But we hadn't found anything that either was on the market or we actually approached, and I'm never shy, but I always approach people if they have a piece of property that I think we might want. Everything's for sale for the right price, of course. We didn't find anything. I didn't even get any no's. I just didn't find anything that we thought was suitable.
And what is the time frame on this, Jason? If we presented some other possibilities, is that something you'd have time to look at, or is Main Street really the only one in this time period?
Right now, it's the only one that we've reviewed that we think we could make work based on just not only our expectations for where we'd want to place something, but also what we think would be reasonable for access to utilities and site costs. But from a timing perspective, it's sort of open season now that there's been some work done in the previous administration to create a funding floor, a tweak in the funding right now with the low-income housing tax credit program. And I know that, and we're looking at other communities as well, but there are a number of other developers that are going towards this funding through Maine Housing, and it is available. We just don't know for how long, because as soon as they get a viable project in, they're going to start stacking that up, and if the funding is gone, it may be too late. I think we still have some time. I'm not saying I need a decision tonight and I need the document tomorrow, the purchase and sale agreement tomorrow, but time is of the essence to some extent.
Thank you.
Jason, I have a couple quick questions. From what I read and understand, all the parking would there be like one parking spot per unit, or on site, or how would that work?
Correct. Yeah, that would be our expectation, that we'd provide all the parking on site. And so one thing I haven't been, talking about a lot would be our hope to mix in some commercial space. Obviously, our preference in the reason for us existing would be to provide the housing. And if for whatever reason, my architect or my civil engineer looks at it and says, we can't fit really any space or any parking for commercial space, and we're probably going to start lopping that off. But our expectation is we would provide all the parking for the residents and some visitors on site. And the reason for that would be just because I know we wouldn't want to start taking up on-street parking and take away from the merchants or the others in the area, because that's just not necessarily something we want to be good neighbors.
My second question, I think Sue has asked you before, but I'm not sure, is what arrangement do you have with Bangor, and what would you expect from us tax-wise?
It's a good question. Our hope would be that there would be some consideration of what the expected tax liability would be, and probably wanting to move towards a TIF request. It's a bit early for that, but it's typically something that we know that we need in order to try to make the operational budget flow. Because we are going to be renting at a below market rate, that margin is quite low. And before we were to actually make that request, we'd come forward and say we end up mapping out the operations for more than about a 15-year period. So we can show, what our expectation is for losses and gains, that kind of stuff. We'll be fully transparent as a part of that request, but I do know right now that that's likely going to happen based on just we've done this now 14 or 15 times, and it's always something that we traditionally need, just because the operating cash flow isn't enough to sustain it long term without something like that. It's unfortunate, and I just sort of a soapbox moment. It's a bit of a trade-off that we have to take in that we don't have enough subsidy out there, and we don't have enough operating cash flow to be able to cover it, and some of that is just sort of the product of other organizations or agencies saying, well, here's as much as we can do, and sometimes the town does have to shoulder some of that burden.
All right, thank you.
And one thing I will say, though, I think that this property, we expect probably the construction to be something like an $8 million project based on current rates. So it's going to be something that is rather expensive. So 50% of that is still, could arguably be a high number. But it's on a per unit basis, it's certainly going to be, more than a traditional housing unit might be right now.
Oh, sorry, I lied. One last question. You had mentioned the ground floor potentially having commercial. Is that something that is more than likely, or is that just a possibility?
It's certainly a possibility. It's nothing that I can say with any certainty right now. And one of the things that will be important is us prioritizing that we have all the parking on site, and that we can get the number of units that make sense to try to create that operational efficiency. If we're able to and we know that we have the square footage, and we know that we can have parking for, whatever type of likely business we'd want to put in there based on zoning and requirements from the town, then that's something we want to do. Just because it adds to vitality of the community, and it actually could provide some cash flow for us to be able to sustain the building long term. And so that's something we would like to do, but I can't say with any certainty right now that it's something we will do.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Mayor.
Jason, what have you done for studies as far as capacity? Are we looking at new folks moving into town, or are we looking at existing folks selling their places to move into these? Or if we're talking 40 units, where are those folks coming from, I guess?
So we know we have not done a study yet, and that's somewhat based on the fact that we know that probably any community with any sort of service center feel to it, whether it has the real service center designation or not, probably could easily use hundreds of units, especially in the older adult range. And that's probably in every community across the state, because by and large, we know probably in Maine we need 10,000 units of affordable housing to try to make current demand. And that number likely is only going to increase depending on how older Mainers are going to be in their 1800s farmhouse and can't support it, or can't keep it up anymore. Our hope would be that, and I can't say with any certainty yet as to whether we're going to be able to do this, but our hope would be that we could create a preference or a set aside. So that way, for Bucksport residents, so that way, existing Bucksport residents, so that way when we're doing lease up at the beginning, or even in the future, if there's an applicant on the list, and we have waiting lists for all of our properties, but essentially they would be moving up in order if they're a Bucksport resident, and we would vet that first. If they're viable, that we know that they're going to be a decent tenant, and they're income eligible, then they'll get basically the first shot at it, and we go down that list. And then if there aren't any, native Bucksportians, then we would move on to someone outside of town. I will say that, we do try to take a looser definition of what that Bucksport resident might look like, because there are a number of cases where someone may have been Bucksport for 15 years, but then had to move out because they either couldn't find affordable rent, or something happened or whatever. And they've been out for a few years and they want to come back. Those are the types of things that we would like to be able to incorporate, because that's important to some people, and we know that probably a number of those individuals that may have a similar story to that. But I don't know yet if we can do that, but I would say we'd be willing to, even if I get the green light from our funder, I'd be willing to bake that into a development agreement that we would have as a part of the larger package on the property.
Right. And real quick, and that helps a lot. I appreciate that. Rich, do you know what the median one-bedroom apartments are renting for in town?
I was hoping you were going to say HUD numbers, because I do have the HUD numbers, but I don't have the. I wasn't quite able to get to that part yet. My next part was, because we do have senior housing at the Gardner Commons, at the Knoxview Apartments, at the Bucksport Apartments, and now Michael Hawes's new project as well. I thought it was important to at least get what the HUD numbers were. And Jason mentioned 60, but so that you're aware, there are three sets of numbers. You have extremely low, you have low, and very low are your priorities. And 60% is right at the very low, the tip of the very low, low market. The one thing I haven't quite understood, Jason, do we use state or do we use Hancock County AMI?
No, you should use a Hancock County AMI. I can send you a sheet that Maine Housing does. They take the HUD data and break it down by county and LMA if it exists.
Yeah, I did that yesterday, and for Hancock County, that's 70,300 is the figures that I came up with, and that's gone up quite considerably since the minimum wage is raised. Because before any minimum wage hikes, it was actually 61,000. So we've seen a 9,000 increase in median income. So for one person family that Jason was talking about, it looks like it's about 24,650. Is that?
And just so I understand, I make sure that I think one of the things, this is not subsidized housing, correct?
Correct. We will receive subsidy to build it, but after that, there's a standard tenant-landlord relationship. While we have to keep the rents not only affordable to a certain bracket, But there is no other subsidy or sort of bailout or rental dollars coming in from, say, Maine Housing or the federal government as a part of it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just, go ahead.
Which was, it's my understanding that, as you said, the subsidies up front for construction, but because your entity relies on this property to sort of pay the bills, that there is it's not just anyone who applies gets in, that there's more than just income requirement, that if there's a negative tenant history that you're not required to.
That is correct. Yes, we do background checks. Like I said, we would be a standard landlord in that perspective. Now, once we have a tenant and they may fall on hard times, we're a different landlord in that perspective. But when we do have standards, and we don't just take any resident, because at the end of the day, it's especially where it's for lack of a better term, congregate living. We don't want to take someone in that's going to be a nuisance to the rest of the neighbors, or otherwise trash the home and cost us tens of thousands of dollars or something in the future when they move out.
Go ahead, Mark. Mark, you're on mute. Sorry.
Just a couple other questions, Jason. That commercial aspect, is that a stipulation that we could put in and you'd accept it that way, or do you need a study to determine that? And
I would need to spend some money with an architect and an engineer to make sure, one, I could fit it. I think there's probably a demand for it. Based on what sort of drive-bys and my knowledge of the town, I think there's probably little vacancy, especially on that main drag. It's really coming down to it's a funky lot, right? The hill is going to pose some of the challenge. The building's going to have to go as far back to that back property line as possible for us to be able to get as much flat surface for parking in there. I just don't know yet, until we start putting boxes down, how much room I have. I would say that if the expectation from the select board or from the council was that it had to be commercial, I wouldn't be able to sign on to that yet, just because it's way too early for me to say.
And the second question, if we identified a bigger parcel, could you potentially bring in more units?
We could. It depends on what we get for construction numbers, because we have essentially a cap available to us. And so anything above that, we'd have to take on in the form of hard debt, or find to basically fundraise elsewhere, and that really doesn't happen. And so there is a traditional sweet spot around the 35 to 40 unit range, depending on where the construction numbers come back at.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any additional questions before we move on to Mr. Gordon?
I just wanted to mention that Mr. Byrd was in attendance at the Senior Resource Committee meeting yesterday via Zoom, where the committee that is sort of the council charged with the implementation of our AARP action plan and the oversight of that, had an opportunity to ask questions and get feedback from Mr. Byrd on this this proposal. They're as always a tough group, but they were I think did a good job of asking many of the similar questions that the council is asking as well. So I just wanted to let you know that he had met with them also.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to Mr. Gordon to make sure that we stay in the constraints of time.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason. Hey, Jack, floor is yours if you're ready.
Hey, Paul. Hi, all. Good to see you again. So that was interesting to hear, and I'm glad I was able to catch some of it, because I can kind of speak to, I guess, the contrast of what Penquist and Mr. Byrd are talking about relative to, I think, what my my thoughts and my proposal, if you will, to the town, which is more of an exploratory nature where, I'd be working as a design consultant, I suppose would be the way to phrase it, with the town to explore, what options there might be for development of that property from a design standpoint, right? So whether or not that, and I'd be looking for feedback from the town and whoever would be part of a committee or resource for what types of use of that property at 27 Main are desirable, and trying to explore what the possibilities are, what highest and best use might mean, and kind of a visioning thing. And I know I got to be careful with certain words and connotations and all, but that's what I do. That's where I come from, right? And when I hear Jason talk about some of their ideas and hopes for that property, and I'm gonna be real careful here because I don't want anyone to think like I'm trying to, like it's a competition. I'm gonna say, well, that's not possible, because I really don't know. But that proposal sounds very aggressive to me, to make it work physically on that site. And so that's something I feel like I can do, is help the town, help people, maybe help Jason, like how do you sort through these things? Because there are some significant features to that site, and Jason alluded to the hill and that need to be addressed. There's some things that are very attractive about that site. Location, ease of access to utilities. It begs the question too: is that property want to be residential in nature of some sort, commercial, a mixed use? Is it close enough to kind of the commercial area of what we traditionally think of as Main Street in downtown Bucksport? I mean, it's not that far, but is it really that, or could it be more service oriented? So trying to explore what some of those possibilities might be. I've looked at a couple of different design possibilities over the last few years. One is a mixed use where the ground floor would be a retail, restaurant, coffee shop, but kind of retail space, I guess we'll just call it that, commercial retail space, and then some apartments above, right? And then what kind of what parking, what amount of parking could be supported in doing that? And the hill is a huge issue, right? How much can you sculpt out of that hill to create more flat, kind of developable area that is of reasonable cost to do so? How much can you kind of build up the hill? Can you build a multi-story building? But to get all this to fit. So that's my approach to this, is kind of from a design standpoint. And we could explore lots of things. Some that we'd probably throw out, but sometimes through that process, you learn things about whether it's the property or what the design potential is, or if there are any land use ordinance or other kind of regulatory impact that need to be fully considered. And might we go through this process and in doing so attract a developer or someone to develop the property. And as I mentioned before, it's in the Rich put it in the MOU, and I'm not a developer, and I'm not looking to necessarily develop this, but I have contacts, and I could see where maybe I could could team up with some people to do something there. And I have some thoughts on that. One of the things that that I do, a lot of my work is deep into the sustainability. So kind of green design and low energy, those types of projects. And so might we be able to put that kind of stamp, if you will, on a project as kind of a feature and as a draw that we're going to redevelop this brownfield site, kind of. It's not a green site because there's something there before. It's not brown because when we talk about development sites, not like it's an industrial, but it's a redevelopment opportunity. It's on Main Street, and it's in Bucksport, in a town that continues to work towards its kind of renaissance, if you will. Like we continue to try to make these things happen. And could that stamp be? And this is just an idea. I'm not saying like this is the thing to do, or I really think this is the thing to do. But could it be founded upon that there's this sustainable project that is net zero energy, and it's got these features, and it's right on Main Street, and it's a real attraction to people, and whether it's because they want to live there, or they want to shop there, or they want to put their little business in there, it's a proven methodology in other communities. It's shown to help promote development. One of the other possibilities I looked at a few years ago when I first was attracted to thinking about this property was because one of the things I do is I do a lot of workforce housing. So they're small houses, kind of postage stamp lots. They're fee simple. People own them, and they have been tied to income, but it's not subsidized. It's basically it limits. There's kind of a cap on the appreciation value, and if you exceed that when you sell your property, then it rolls back into it. And that's necessarily suggesting that's the way to go here, but that type of housing. And so I looked at, we could develop that lot into four house lots, build these, super low energy kind of green, whether we go all the way to passive house, which is a whole other thing I could talk for an hour on. And, you have four house lots. Do you want new houses on Main Street? I don't know the answer to that, but it's a possibility, and it may not be highest and best use. It may not be really a good thing, or it might be a great thing. So that's the way I think. That's where I come from, and I feel like that's what I have to offer. And if you like, I hadn't thought of this till just a few minutes ago when Jason was wrapping up. So I've mentioned these two kind of design studies I've done, concepts. And I'd be happy to share them with you. They're sketchy, but they're sketches, and they kind of show the site and the lot. And if you like, I can share my screen and just show these two things. Just so this is kind of what I do. This is very kind of preliminary stuff, very conceptual, but they'll give you a flavor of what I do. And we could probably do 10 of these, but I don't know if you're interested. I could do that. Like I said, I hadn't really planned on it or thought about it till just a few minutes ago, but it might help the group.
Feel free.
Want me to do that? Okay. So I've not done a screen share in Google before, Google Meet or whatever we're in here. So I guess I go to present now. Sorry for the clumsiness here. My entire screen. Sure. Let's see what's on my entire screen. All right. You are presenting your screen. Okay. I'm sorry. I don't really know what I'm doing. Did you see a bunch of stuff move, or are you still looking at the original screen?
Looking at your email now.
Oh, great. Ooh.
There we go.
There?
Oh, we just saw some sketches. There we go. Yep.
Okay, good. All right, because I wasn't sure, because in Zoom, it takes you to a screen and you can't move. But it looks like in Google, we can move, and you can see where my travel destinations, I guess, over here. So, which, that's old because no one's traveling anywhere these days. All right, so this is the first one. So you see this, it says Main Street down at the bottom. You see my cursor moving around? I'm sorry for being so mundane about it. So you see Main Street down here? Someone say yes if you do. That's all I need to hear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, because I can't see you either. Okay. So here's the property. So I'm going to trace it, right? So I got the survey, and so as you probably know, it's kind of oddly shaped property, combination of 3 or 4 properties from years ago. And so there's the slope, and you can kind of see this light dotted line here. My cursor is tracing. So that's what we call the toe of the slope. That's the bottom of the hill. So basically this rectangle that I'm outlining now is the flat part, if you will, right? So the further we go this way, the further north we go, the more we're wanting to eat into the hill. And there are, implications of doing that, of course. We see that at the ball field, right? When what happens to these walls sometimes after a while is they don't necessarily hold up, or, the engineering required to make that happen. So I just looked at, well, what could possibly happen here that would not require, a huge amount of site work and provide, parking. So it came up with this blue rectangle is, 50 foot by 150 foot building. And that kind of divided into 3 equal places. So you got 3 kind of 50 by 50 spaces that could be rented, and maybe, someone could take the whole first floor. You could do, divide it however you want. That's just kind of the way it works. And then provide parking, try to keep, in my opinion, you want to keep the storefront, you want to keep the front of the building on Main Street. I don't want to push the building back and put a parking lot in front, because that's kind of antithetical to a typical Main Street configuration, right? Here's a sidewalk. We'd have, ease of access off of these little walkways into these buildings. And then there's these 2 parking lots. It's just what fits, right? And this is not based upon what the parking requirements may or may not be from the town. You think I might have, but I just didn't go there yet. Just saying, like, what's the most we might be able to do, right? And so, there's 12 spaces here and there's 12 here. Is that enough for this size building and probably 3 apartments or 4 apartments on the second floor? Yeah, from a quick study standpoint, I think so. There's serious questions about maneuvering in and out, because we can't really kind of get around the building unless we do a major retaining wall. And then some of the site development. So, here's the power pole here, and the overhead electric line that goes up the hill to this pole and then distributes to these houses. So somehow that has to be addressed and reimagined, what happens to the power. But, those are utilities and things that only require money. So that's, real quick. The intention of this sketch wasn't really to share in this forum, but I think it's safe enough and kind of give you an idea, perhaps. And then real quick, I'll just show you the house piece just to give you another kind of idea. So it's the same basic thing, same overlay, but this was the thinking. I think I did this almost 4 years ago now. So again, same idea that there's, we cut into the hill. It's about the same location as I just showed you. But I was looking at 4 lots with kind of like a shared drive and parking around back. These are really simple 2-story houses. Again, kind of pushing it up towards the street so that we're not, we're kind of keeping the front of the buildings along Main Street. Possible 5th lot here on the corner of the property, but that's where the land slopes back up. And so, that's a more involved site development piece but you could do it, but you'd need a pretty substantial retaining wall here. So, there's another extreme. Well, could you do 4 or 5 houses? Do you want to do 4 or 5 houses? I mean, that's kind of part of the question. And these are really fast, quick studies, thinking. And if, we did some of this and we hit upon 1 or 2 that we thought were worth more development, then we would take it to the next level and do more refined drawings, and can do like 3D modeling to kind of show how this might happen. And I could, I don't know if I have anything I could show you real quick, but I could show you, how that might work. But I'll tell you what, I will take 2 minutes, if you don't mind. I will show you another project real quick. So this is a project that I'm currently working on. It's in downtown Northeast Harbor. My client is the College of the Atlantic, and we're doing, I may have mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. We are doing a mixed use development for 4 apartments and then a retail space on Main Street. I just want to make sure I'm getting the right drawings here. Sorry to share all this with you. And I think that's it. Yeah, let's look at this one. This is probably a good one. So, again, this is to give you a little bit of a flavor of what I do and how I work. So, real quick, site, I don't know if anyone's how familiar you might be with Main Street in downtown Northeast Harbor, but in 2008 or 09, there was we had a fire, and a building on this lot burned down. So this is Main Street. The empty lot is here. The Colonel's Restaurant is here. So this is kind of an urban site, even though it's kind of an odd term to think of that in Northeast Harbor, Maine. But and this is a photograph of the site from kind of looking back towards Main Street. And you can see these are the remnants of the old foundation. So the idea was to develop this site into a house mixed-use development. So we went through and explored several options. So this is concept A, which this is the basement level, this is the retail level, and second and third floor above were apartments. And then this quick section, and here's A1. So we just went through and studied, looked at different possibilities. And then we went to this other site development idea where we had a longer building out back. So the idea is these are apartments, and this is a retail with one apartment and minimal parking. The parking requirements in Northeast Harbor are not dictated by the land use ordinance, so we have some latitude. Although when you go to the planning board, you have to show that you have enough. So anyway, here's some more concepts where we're looking at different ways to stack apartments in here, and different opportunities out here on Main Street. The pink spaces to the retail. We go through, and then we did a variety of studies of what the front of the building, how it would fit on Main Street. Some of these are better than others. Don't be too harsh in your judgment, but the college wanted to look at different possibilities. So these are existing buildings. This is a little shop. This is the Kimball shop, and this is the Colonel's Restaurant. And here's this hole is what we're filling in. So this is one we call the flat top, right? We had a gambrel, which is a lot of gambrel roof, really traditional thing in Northeast Harbor. This is a pretty straightforward gabled, gabled front building, retail, apartment. This is just attic up here. And then, we looked at this modern thing to think about budget and some other things. So just so you know, we went with this design here, just in case you're wondering. So, and then we build these budgets. So there's a budget that goes with each design that talks about all the different components of what the costs are, and we use cost per square foot for the construction piece, and we end up with building these full budgets that include, the land acquisition, insurance, legal stuff, contingency, design, fees and services, and then construction. So that's probably enough. So anyway, there's 3 examples, kind of sketchy stuff specific to 27 Main, and then this other stuff was just to give you an idea of what I do and what the possibilities might be. So there you go. Sorry for kind of rambling on and totally unplanned presentation, but that give you some idea. So,
Sure.
Questions, comments?
Open the floor to questions. I guess it doesn't sound like there's a lot, Jack. I guess the only question I'd have, and I know you've said this a couple times, that you're not a developer, but obviously you're, with this type of project, you're looking down the road, you're looking down Development Street, so to speak. Just in your opinion, looking at that parcel of land, looking at, as you've talked about, you've been looking at this parcel of land for some options for a number of years, just kind of thinking it through.
Yep.
What do you think the most useful, what the best use of that land is based on, not the politics of it, so to speak, but just the fit, location, et cetera?
Yeah, my gut tells me what I want to believe. I guess I'll characterize it as is that mixed use piece. I showed you the sketch with the kind of the retail commercial on the ground floor and then some housing above. That seems to kind of where my thinking keeps going back to, and it's just kind of an instinct gut thing. I don't really know from a development standpoint, does that make sense? Is it desired? Is it needed? I mean, I don't know, but from a design standpoint, that's it. The house that the house lot development thing, that might be something that could work. How the town looks upon the ability to generate some revenue from taxing it and having the houses in there on Main Street. It doesn't seem out of the question given where it is on Main Street. So those are my two primary thoughts. I've heard mention of, could you develop that into for a bank? Is that possible? I think then you have to start asking questions about maneuvering and drive-throughs and those types of things. How do you address that? But so that's I don't know. It's my answer to your question.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you answering it. I'm not going to hold you to it. I was just curious as to
that's
just how you saw it in your head. So yep.
Right, yeah, and that's the type of questions and the type of effort that would be vital to
yep.
kind of what I'm putting out there as a possibility.
Sure.
So,
Yep.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Gordon? Great.
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman, to the board and the council while we're here. We've had this. Thank you, Jack, for that too. By the way, I appreciate you showing us some of the pictures and the photos. That you didn't have to do that. Hopefully, nobody steals your designs off us by watching this.
I don't worry about that.
We've been sitting on this for 3 or 4 years now. However long we've had this piece of property, I think it's been 5 almost, probably.
Mm-hmm.
6,
8.
It's been a long time, yes. And it almost seems like we're trying to make a snap decision, overnight here on something that we've had no takes on it, no nothing really to come look at it. Now all of a sudden I won't say deluged, but are we putting ourselves in a position where we're going to try to make some snap decision right now and have buyer's remorse one way or the other? Or do we take our due diligence with both of these and take another little bit of time, to figure out what people want to do and if we're even going in the right direction? I toss that out there because I'm not 100% sure what direction I would go in right now, without having some more input and seeing what we want to do. And I certainly hope that we don't want to make a decision tonight. I know Jason was hoping that we would make some decision in a hurry. And again, if that's what the folks want, I think all the proposals are great. I think we just want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence as much as we can. So, thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No, there's no resolve. The only thing on the agenda tonight is a report from the committee. There was no intent that there was any decision making on this evening, understanding that there would be more time needed to make that decision.
Yeah, in the interest of time, as long as Councilors Eastman and Rankin are okay with this, I think when we present this to the committee, I'll just mention what was discussed this evening and talk about probably what the committee's recommendations for next steps are. And if I'm not putting words in your mouth, I'm kind of pretty close, in my opinion, to the mayor. And I think that, I certainly don't want to rush into anything. And I think it's really time that the council decide what its priorities are for 27 Main Street. What direction we want to go. And I think that's, unless there's something else as the committee, you'd like me to bring forward to the council tonight.
What I would suggest, Paul, is that we all think about this. We're meeting next week for our goals and objectives for the year. I would hope that this would be part of that discussion. So, let's take some time and, it is a workshop next week. I want to warn people that, we're not going to have a lot of back and forth with public. It's sort of for us to set our goals and where we want to go, but certainly emailing all these things we've been doing to get input would be a great thing. So sorry
Sure.
to take it over.
No, that allows me to keep my update to the council this evening brief, unless there's anything that Councilor Rakin or Eastman would like me to add. Okay.
No, I think that's great, Paul.
Okay. And then really quickly before we adjourn, there's one additional item, and it's a request from Dino Kizimitakis, and I have one of those last names, so I'm going to apologize if I massacred it, for parking on Franklin Street.
Okay, I'm going to leave.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you. Unless you have anything else, it's not like you're done. And thanks for the time. Much appreciated. Take care. Bye.
Yep. So bye.
On this issue, Paul, all I saw was the handwritten note. What's the exact acreage, and has there been money talk? I have no idea. This is new to me.
Stu, do you have anything to add on this one?
Muted, Sue.
I'm better when I'm muted. There was a map that was also in the packet. Did people see that?
Yep.
Okay. What that is the parking lot adjacent to the church. The very end of that parking lot, if you see that square with the car in it, the town owns that parcel, that square, and what Mr. Kismatakis is interested in doing is acquiring that. He spoke to Rich about it initially. He owns the apartment building at 70 Franklin, I think it's 70 Franklin Street. It's the yellow one on the corner. And he's looking to acquire that bump out piece that goes over behind, actually Mark Eastman's barn that goes adjacent to that, to acquire it and for parking for his apartment house.
Okay.
Yeah, really quickly, he came in to see us about something different there. There's a little stretch of driveway. He wasn't quite sure where the boundary line was. And after talking with Caitlin, decided that was his property. And he mentioned that he has 7 units but 4 parking spots. Currently, his folks park in that map that you see there. My hesitation with it, and again, this is a council decision, but if we don't own the whole thing, we own that little spot. There's 8 spots there. If for some reason the Masonic Hall were to sell and we'd lose parking there, if for some reason the church ever left and that agreement ended as well, that would leave us no additional parking for our public safety personnel. So at least having those 8 backup spots would be something that would be beneficial to the town. We maintain the entire parking lot. I don't know what happens if we sell those 8 spots. Do we do all of it but those 8 or what?
Mark?
We don't have the ability to give them a right of way to get there, so I just don't think that's even in the realm.
Yep.
You know, somebody has to have a right of way to get to it, and we can't give him one. The church would have it. That would be my take.
He couldn't access it through his property?
Maybe, but not easily. There's quite a drop from Franklin, and quite a drop from him to get there.
Yep. Well, I don't mean to rush this in the interest of time, but it seems like right now this proposal at best has a lot of unknowns attached to it. I think if we want to take a look at this further, we would need to see some more concrete details in terms of what the actual proposal would be, in terms of all of the things we've talked about tonight. So, any questions on that? Okay, great. Anything else? We only have 1 minute, so if not, we'll adjourn. That is, we've adjourned. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.